They called it the shot heard round the world. And by the time the echoes had died down, a ragtag bunch of colonists had beaten the best army in the world. A free people ought to be armed. Americans need never fear their government because of the advantage of being armed, which the Americans possess over people of almost every other nation. Guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel. Unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force. Whenever you give up that force, you are ruined. The great objective is that every man be armed. Everyone who is able may have a gun.
Let me say this, that the hour is desperate. Time is running out. You've read enough literature, you've heard enough rhetoric, you've watched enough programs, you've listened to enough rumors about black ninja turtles jumping out of helicopters and UN troops amassing along the Canadian border. Good night, nurse, there's 1,000 rumors. But what about reality? What about reality? If you want to take this nation back, think about eating an elephant. You don't eat it all at once. You just grab hold and start gnawing where you are. And I say to you that we can take back Michigan, and we can take it back county by county. We can establish 83 strong constitutional and legal brigades in this state, and when we do, and when our numbers rise, and when we're organized, and when we're legitimate, and when we are visible before all, then perhaps one day, we won't have to go groveling to the politicians begging. They'll come to us asking us, what do you want me to do? That'll be a change, won't it? A refreshing change. Jefferson said that when the government fears the people, you have what? Liberty. But when the people fear the government, you have tyranny. You know the words. You know the words. And I say this to you who may be weak-hearted. If you love wealth more than liberty, and you love the tranquility more than the animating contest of freedom, then go home in peace. We ask neither your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon your shoulders, and may posterity forget that you were ever our countrymen. This is our finest hour, gentlemen, ladies.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone here today. We're here to discuss the militia. And to start with, I want to let you know that my name is Ray Southwell. I'm a captain in the Northern Michigan Regional Militia, the 1st Brigade. On the 29th of April, 1994, after a lot of discussion here in the Northland of Michigan, 28 men came together on private property and formed the Northern Michigan Regional Militia, the 1st Brigade. At that time, we elected our commander, Norm Olson, who was elected again from the membership of the militia in the region at that time. At this point, I'd like to introduce our commander, Norman Olson. Norm, if you'd come.
Thank you, Ray. I thank you for this opportunity. It's a privilege to meet with men and women who are seeking more information concerning the militia. What I need to tell you today is it's time to wake up. It's time to stand up. It's time to speak up. It's time to once again inflame this country with a passion for liberty and for freedom. It's time to talk with other people about the historic aspects of our country, to talk to them about the framers of our Constitution, a rich document that has given us those liberties and has recognized and enumerated and has established those inalienable rights which can never be taken away from free men. Thomas Paine once said that what we obtain cheaply we esteem lightly. It is the dearness that gives everything its value. And I'm afraid that America has grown lazy. America has fallen asleep at the controls. America has allowed liberty and freedom to slip through its fingers. And now we are in a very dark and ominous time. And I am afraid that unless the attitude and unless the spirit of our land changes, and unless we esteem liberty and freedom highly, that armed conflict will be inevitable. And I don't want that. I would say to you who are concerned about America to build militias, civilian, well-regulated, unorganized, independent militias. You become the men and the women. You become those who will push back the tyrants and push back those who would enslave us, push back those who would rob us of the liberty and the freedom that so many have given the last full measure to obtain. And every one of you needs to visit hallowed ground. Every one of you needs to visit Lexington and Concord, and Bunker Hill. Every one of you needs to see Normandy's beaches and visit the cemeteries where men and women who have stood gallantly and valiantly for this land, who have died for freedom and liberty. Their voices now echo from the past. And they say to us, if not who, if not you, who will? And if not for this cause, for what cause will you wait? And if not now, when will you stand? I say to you who may be faint-hearted, I say that if you love wealth more than liberty, and if you love the quiet tranquility of servitude more than the animating contest of freedom, then go home in peace. We ask neither your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon your shoulders. And may posterity forget that you were ever our countrymen. We are in a desperate hour. Let me say this too, that these words that I speak to you today are not new. For they were the very same words that those men 218 years ago today said when they stood around and considered the ominous darkening storm that was approaching on the horizon. And those men then in 1775 and 1776, they were quoting from others who had gone on before. For you see, these words that I speak today were also spoken on the Mayflower. And on the Mayflower, those words that they were uttering were from the Old Testament, from other men and women who wanted to be free at all costs. And whether it was the exodus from Egypt, or the exodus from Europe, or the exodus of free men from an enslaving British Empire, God is in it. God is in it because he desires all men everywhere to be free. And I say to you, this is your finest hour. This is your opportunity to stand up as men and women under the flag of the United States and under the rights that are enumerated and established in our Constitution and the Bill of Rights, to stand up and to take back our land for freedom's sake, for rule of law, for due process, for jury trials, that men and women in America can once again enjoy the heritage that we have received. Woe unto us if we allow it now to slip through our fingers. I urge you all to listen very closely as we discuss how to begin militia units. And I urge you all to go ahead and begin. No longer be afraid, no longer hide. Come out and stand in the light of freedom. Stand up. Be seen. Speak up. Do what God expects you to do as men and women of freedom. You can do it as we're doing it. What is the cost? I don't know. That's in God's hands. What will tomorrow hold? I don't know. but I do know who holds tomorrow. And I do know the principles of liberty and the principles of freedom. And I do know those things that God holds sacred. That he wants each man and each woman to be a free moral agent before him. Each one of us with the opportunity and the freedom to make choices. And so I say to you, once again, be bold, be courageous. The challenge is before us. Listen well to the words that are said in this video. Listen well to the people who are speaking. Begin now as quickly as you can, for the hour is late, and liberty's flame has nearly been quenched in this great land. Thank you. I'd like to introduce now Chaplain Hall, Douglas Hall. He can give you some of his credentials, his experience is broad, working with military. But I love this man because he is also a lover of liberty and a lover of historic documents and those things that have given us the framework of liberty today. Chaplain Hall, would you come? God bless you.
Thank you, Major. Thing that gripped my heart a great deal this past week was having copied a so-called medical procedure that came out of a publication recently, and the medical procedure had to do with evacuating, as they termed it, a baby from a mother's womb. And what they did was 2/3 of the baby was evacuated by forceps. This was all in pictures, very graphic. And then while the head was still in the womb, and of course the child is still alive, the evacuator, or whatever you want to name him, inserted surgical scissors in the base of this baby's brain, and then a suction unit, and removed its brains. And I understand that this was to be for research for some type of disease that's in the country for older people. Anyway, I'm glad to be here today too, and I'm glad to be here for that kind of a reason. It's some time ago I done some research in a book called A Twisted Cross. And as I read The Twisted Cross, the Lord spoke to my spirit, and he said, this is the blueprint the devil has for your country. And Major Olson spoke of some ominous parallels, and as I read that book, I remember what Leonard Peikoff had said about ominous parallels. And ominous parallels of Dachau and Auschwitz and places of that nature paralleled with what's happening in our country. So this is why I want to be part of the militia program, and be part of the militia program among men of our own community, and to do what I can do to help the militia program focus itself upon biblical as well as constitutional principles that are the very foundation of our nation. Years ago, the Lord quickened some scripture in Jeremiah 6:16 to me. It says, thus says the Lord, stand by the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is, and walk in it, and you shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. And as God quickened that to me, I thought of it purely in a theological perspective, but the day came when that began to historically mean something to me as well. And then I noticed here, he said, stand by the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is. And I found the good way was the way that God had developed a destiny for the United States, and then begin to express that and lead men into it through the Constitution. I believe the Declaration of Independence. This morning I was doing some studying on the flag of the United States and what men had to say in terms of what God meant to the United States, and I absolutely believe the flag. The Star-Spangled Banner was divinely instituted and divinely directed. And I believe God has a destiny for the country. But as a chaplain, I see that God's destiny for the country is also founded upon the justness that's in the country and the rightness that's in the country. And so I see my contribution to the militia movement is to help them keep perspective. Because the Lord said, seek in the ways, stand by the ways and ask for the ancient paths where the good ways and walk in it. And I believe that that's both a biblical and a constitutional way that we're called to walk in. And it's my business, and my contribution to the militia movement is to help the commanders and the officers keep that perspective, keep both a biblical and a constitutional way. And I see the need for it because recently, and I've said this before, but the last 9 months I was a grandfather again. And at 62 years old, I'm really learning how to love children, my grandchildren, and this little girl is the apple of my eye. And when I think that in this nation today, such procedures I talked to you about a few minutes ago, and it's rather crude, but when that's stopping the heartbeat of children in America, then something is very, very wrong. Something's wrong, and something's got to be done. And I recently, well, not recently, for the past many years, I've written letters to Congress and to personal congressmen and senators, but recently I wrote a letter of something that distressed me greatly, and it really agonized me as I watched that flag, the Star-Spangled Banner, waving over Waco, and watching the buildings burn there, and watching that whole thing, and it distressed me greatly as I had to posture up a thesis in my own mind that I was watching my government kill a church and bury the evidence. And I had to say that something's got to be done. And of course I was writing letters and making telephone calls, and I received a personal letter back, and 2/3 of the letter told me what I'd already seen over the media, national media in the country, and the other third of the letter told me how much money I could pay for a government report to tell me the truth about that place. And as I sat there at my desk, I felt as though the Spirit of the Lord spoke within me, and He was saying, it's not going to be done through politicians. It's not going to be done through political agendas and political maneuvering, but if your nation is going to be restored, it's going to be done through the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that inspired me that much more to be part of the men and women that come from the houses and the businesses and the community around about. I stood at Lexington Green. I was in Buckman's Tavern. I saw the ball that was allegedly shot into the mirror by a British soldier who thought he'd encountered another soldier in the tavern. I saw the Holy Lord hinges on the doorways that spoke of that everyday belief of our forefathers. And as I stood there, and you could almost shoot a marble across Lexington Green, that small piece of green estate, where just common everyday folks, farmers, craftsmen of that day, said enough is enough. We've got to come together, and we've got to stop. And they did. And this is what I sense today being part of the militia. They said stop. The time has come again to say stop. You know, it's recorded, in some historians record, that before the British Army arrived, one of the pastors there and one of the deacons, and incidentally a third of the pastors who went into the Army, the War of Independence in the Army, were absolutely rifle or musket company leaders. But there was apparently 2 of them out there, or one, a deacon, was there, and before that whole thing began, he led them in singing the 100th Psalm. And in a sense, they were singing that 100th Psalm, not in the sense of just doing something religious or a lot of words, but they were singing that 100th Psalm because they were calling on Jehovah to stand with them because they thought we were right. So this is what my heart's in the militia movement. I see God doing things in the militia movement He's not even able to do in the church. And I'm calling on the great Jehovah to be with us. Captain Southwell, thank you.
The desert, I knew when they went to Kuwait, I knew, and I was personally praying that we remain the kind of people that God would say, that's my army. I'm going to use it, and if He uses it, He would also say, I'm going to protect it. And so I believe, as I was writing that day, the Lord was saying to me, and this is a far-out theory, but I think it's scriptural and reasonable, I felt that the Lord was saying, this group. Because, you know, the way it's growing across the nation is phenomenal. I go to a staff meeting, can't believe what I hear going on. But I felt like the Lord is saying, this is the army of the Lord in the United States for this moment.
What I do want to talk about is the who and what is the militia. To start with, it is all of the people. All of the people. We don't care what color you are. We don't care your nationality. We don't care your gender. If you love liberty, come join us. That is who the militia is. We are not some of those, and I'm not going to mention some of the other groups that you've all heard about. We believe in liberty. If you believe in liberty, come join us. If you're disabled, come join us. How old? Doesn't matter as far as we're concerned. Our oldest militia member currently is 72 years old. I believe our youngest is 23. We have a gentleman who only has one arm. And he, again, loves liberty, and he's willing to take that stand. We will take anyone that loves liberty. When should this occur? The time is now. No more talk. The time is now. I believe there's three ways of controlling the government. The first way is the election process. The second is the threat of using force to take the government back. That's the third process of keeping our government in check, is by taking it back. I personally don't believe that we're to that point. I don't believe enough people have come forward. That's why this brigade went public. We need to let the politicians and the bureaucrats know that we're taking a stand. Enough is enough. It does no good to stay hiding and be an underground militia, and I know many of you are involved in underground militias. You must go public. We must be able to network. We must be able to share information. You must go public. When and why? We can talk for hours as to the whys. Probably the biggest reason is going back and looking at history and what the Second Amendment was all about. And I've got some quotes here from Patrick Henry. There's a book that was written, and I had the opportunity to read it. It was published in 1838. It was called The Life and Character of Patrick Henry. I've got two requests of everyone, looking to the video people. If you can get a hold of this book, please read it. I have a copy. I am looking for a publisher or some way of reprinting this book so we can get it out to the American public. It will clarify without a doubt what the second article of the Bill of Rights was all about. Patrick Henry, and these are quotes from, actually the year was 1788. It was at the Richmond Convention, the debate over the Constitution. Prior to 1787, we were a confederation of states. In 1787, the Constitution was formed, but there were no Bill of Rights with that Constitution. Patrick Henry opposed the Constitution violently because of the massive federal control that it entailed. He felt strongly that we needed a Bill of Rights. Nothing, quote from Patrick Henry, nothing will preserve our liberty but downright force. Whenever you give up that force, you are inevitably ruined. My great objection to this government, and again he was referring to the Constitution without the Bill of Rights, and he was even to the extent that he was opposed to the Constitution for any reason because of what he saw the potential danger was. He finally accepted the idea if the Bill of Rights were added. My great objection to this government is that it does not leave us the means of defending our rights or waging war against tyrants. There wasn't a Second Amendment. There wasn't an issue at the time of the people bearing arms or being involved in a militia. There was a debate in Richmond, and I read this again. This was what he said in 1788, published in 1838, and I thought how pertinent it is for today. During the debates, there was a Mr. Pendleton who stated, we don't need to worry about our politicians. We don't need to worry about the rights. He said that all we had to do is the people could wholly recall our delegated power and change our servants. Isn't that what we hear today? Oh, or we hear that the politicians now have evolved to a higher level, and they're not going to become tyrants. They're not going to become too powerful. We can just elect new ones. Patrick Henry's statement back to Mr. Pendleton. Oh, sir, we should have fine times indeed if to punish tyrants it were only necessary to assemble the people. Your arms, wherewith you could defend yourself, are gone. Show me the age and country where the rights and liberties of people were placed on the sole chance, he said, of their rulers being good men without a consequence of loss of liberty. No nation, again, this is him quoting 1788. This is not me. This is not our commander. This is Patrick Henry. No nation ever did or ever can retain liberty after the loss of the sword and the purse. And I'm here to tell you that we certainly lost the purse, and we're about ready to lose the sword, and it's time to take a stand. It is time to take a stand. Am I overreacting? What would Patrick Henry say today? I know what he would say. You go back and read it in the book. He said, establish the militia now. Now. We need to establish the militia now. How do you do it? Do it the same way we did it. Get the word out. Meet. Those individuals that want to be part of the militia, get together. Appoint, elect a commander. I want to make sure that it's real clear right now that we're not here to tell you how to run your brigade. Our commander, myself, or the chaplain are not here to ask you to follow us. We are here to ask you to form your militia, your brigade, to follow your conscience after liberty. When your brigade is formed, it will be just like our brigade. No one will be higher than the other. The point of it is to let the opposition know we're here and we need to network. Is there risk? Absolutely. A friend of mine said, Ray, you could lose it all. You lost your job. I said, that's right. I said, but what good is it for me to save all my worldly pleasures, my worldly wants, to give to my children if I don't leave my children with liberty? We must do this for our children. We must take a stand. And that's what we're here all about. I want to leave you with a couple of mailing address. If you would like to write us, please do so. You can send that to Ray Southwell, Post Office Box 445, Alanson, that's spelled A-L-A-N-S-O-N, Michigan, 49706. If you like, you can call my office. It is 616-347-0500. We need to network now. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate everyone being here.
All right, we'd like to spend this time now in kind of an informal setting here with the staff who we have with us today, talking about the nuts and the bolts of organization. As Captain Southwell has mentioned, we met in the woods on the 29th, was it, Ray? 29th of April of this year, 1994, and formed the militia. We didn't know how we were going to do it. We had no one who was alive who was part of a civilian militia. As far as I know, the last civilian militias had been dissolved at the end of Second World War when the last of the coastal watches were disbanded. And since the Huns and the Japanese are no longer a threat to us anymore, now we find that the enemy is coming from within. And unfortunately, we kind of feel like the second generation after Joshua came into the land, that the people had forgotten all about how to stand for the things that God had given to them. And now we are trying to rebuild and trying to rework this whole idea of a militia. We had to first of all understand that the militia must stand upon three legs of a tripod. The first one is organization. Any unit that is going to be effective must be efficient. And efficiency is going to come from organization. I would warn you, however, do not make your brigades so organized that you're going to have to assign people just to watch out that other people are doing what they're expected to do. In other words, don't multi-layer and make your militia so complex that it is hard to go forth and to accomplish the goals that you've set for it. Make it as simple as possible, Ray?
I just want to interrupt. I think part of that whole issue, too, is we've had discussion, debate, if you will, on who do you allow in or who should you exclude. And we certainly have opened it up to both men and women, young and old. We do have an age limit on the young end of 18. However, I think we would probably be flexible on that based on the child or the young person and based on the parents. Also, the disabled can serve a purpose in so many other capacities. So whether you're disabled or who you are, even if you don't feel like you can pull a trigger, you can still get involved with the militia. The other issue is and I lost my thought.
One thing I might mention is the question that comes to mind: what about the children? What can the children do? In any organization, you have two parts. You have an operations part, and you also have a management part. Now, in labor, they call that business and management, or labor and management. And so what you can do is allow the young people that you do not have in the labor portion or in the operations portion, they can work in the management portion. They can be the runners. They can be the assistants to the administration chief. They can be those who stay in the cantonment area to do the various jobs in the cantonment area while your operations people are practicing in the field. There are jobs for the young people. If you'll remember, historically, the young people were the buglers and were the ones that carried the standards. They were the ones, the drummers. They have a job, they have a role, they have a function. And I tell you this, that unless we involve our young people, they will look at us with some strangeness, thinking that they don't have a part, that this is only for grown-ups. And I remind you all again that liberty is everyone's business, and what we must do must include everyone. So do not make your brigade so complex that it becomes impossible to obtain or to achieve your goals. And Ray?
And you remind me of what I wanted to say now. There was discussion on whether you should allow, quote, insane or mental deviants or felons in your militia. Our rule is everyone is allowed in unless or until they discredit the militia. And that gets back to what the commander was saying about the complexity. You can make your brigade so complex, you're going to spend all your time screening people's history and trying to figure out whether you should let them in or not. Let them in. If they discredit the militia, then in our brigade, the maximum punishment is discharge if you discredit the militia. So keep things simple.
You'll see in our booklet, as is now before you, as the camera comes in close on the organizational structure, that our organizational structure is like unto almost all military organization structures. It's very simple. We have a commander, and generally in a brigade unit like ours, the commander will be given the rank of major. Under the commander, there is a command staff. and a command staff are those people who meet weekly to discuss the objectives and the goals, how to bring about the goals. In our booklet also are the goals stated. Our goals are chiefly these three: equip, instruct, and inform. Prepare the militia unit for the mission and the purpose for which it is formed. You will also need a chaplain, and we praise God that God has given us a good chaplain, and the best that I think that, and I believe that God has prepared him for this hour, that you'll need a chaplain. And as Chaplain Hall has clearly said, this thing is of God, and if God is not in this, then it's nothing that we want part of. And we're not talking about any God. We're talking about the Lord God Jehovah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the personable, knowable God who reigns in heaven and who has his hand in the very course of mankind. All things are determined by God, and we are part of his program and his plan. And that's the God that must be exalted and his name lifted up above all others. And these things must be brought to bear. When you're talking about militia, if it is not of God, then we become like the tyrants. And we do not want this operation of ours, this thing we call the militia. We do not want it to turn into something akin to the French Revolution. We do not want heads to roll and people to be hanged without any cause just because someone was aggrieved. We still believe in liberty. We still have the high ethic of law and order and jury trials and due process of law, even for the tyrants. Even for the tyrants. And so organization, do not become so complex that it becomes something that you cannot manage. Make it as simple as you can. Our diagram shows a typical organizational structure. Yours need not be so complex. You may have, in fact, only 2 or 3 men who you can establish as your command staff. In the beginning, they may have to wear many hats. Your supply sergeant may have to be your administration chief. He may have to work with transportation. Your information officer, like my Captain Southwell here, may end up being your chief of staff, as he has become for me. And let me say this also about your commander. His time is very limited. And as your militia unit grows, your commander is going to be burdened down with not only the task of maintaining the mission of the organization, but also the task of meeting the personal and the individual demands of the people in the brigade. For that reason, the chief of staff must shelter and protect the commander from the loss of time. For that reason, we have a chaplain who is gifted with that skill that he can meet individually with people and to talk to them about personal problems that they might have and to help to encourage them. Let me say this also, that many people who come to the brigade are going to come, and they're going to be afraid, they're going to be scared, they're going to be fearful. And they need to be directed so that fear that they have becomes a holy indignation, if you will, a righteous indignation, so that that fear will bring them in from the fringe where they might be on the edge of doing something terrible, to bring them in with other men and women who are also afraid, but now we have changed that into a righteous indignation. And the potential then is for them to go forth and to do something good. So you'll find yourself turning very quickly into a therapy group. There's no doubt about it. You've got a lot of people who are afraid. They will come to you. They want to know that you can help them. Leadership is that which is going to be needed. That's the first leg, organization. Let me speak about the second leg. That's visibility.
This is the time when we have to stand up. When we formed the militia, we realized that it was going to have to be formed based upon 3 principles: legitimacy, organization, and visibility. You will find that you cannot achieve one without the other 2. You cannot escape and run back up into the woods. Many people are here today, and I applaud you for being here, but I say unto you that 10 times this many wanted to come, but they were afraid to come out in public. Don't be hidden. Walk out from under the shadows. Walk out from behind your barriers and your fears. When your fear turns into righteous indignation, then America can use you. But we can't use you if you're sniveling and afraid to take back liberty. You've got to want it so badly that you're willing to die for it. And I say unto you that unless you've already died to yourself, then you'll never achieve the principles that are nobly engraved in this rock behind me and also in the Constitution. Every one of those men who signed their name on the Constitution and gave their name to the Declaration of Independence pretty well signed away their death warrant. They pretty well gave away their life. They realized that they had died already. And until you're ready to die to self and live for a higher principle and a higher calling, that which many, many, many have already given the last full measure for, then you're not worthy to be called a patriot. You're not worthy to join a militia. You're not worthy to stand with the other brave, those who are buried in the South Pacific and Normandy's beaches. You're not willing to stand with those who stood at Lexington and Concord. Don't even be named with those people. They would be ashamed if they saw what was happening to America today. If Patrick Henry were here today, he would weep before you openly, wondering how so many who had gone on before and had given all now have left it to us who have given it all away. And I say unto you, stand up, speak up, but by God, wake up first of all. You're going to need the legitimacy. You're going to need the organization. You're going to need the visibility. You need that. Let me say this also, that when you form your militia.
But you see, that's the fear factor, and that's the fear that the federal government and other tyrants are trying to sow into the hearts of people, that the people, the civilians in this land, have to be afraid of the militia. But it's the militia that stands for what is right and just and good. It is the militia that is trying to protect and to secure the constitutional rights of the people. This whole process is called demonization. And if they can make the militia look bad through discrediting, then one day the tyrants can launch their attack, and the civilians will sit back and applaud as the tanks tear down our homes. We can't have it. We've got to be visible. The third leg is legitimacy. Legitimacy. We are legitimate constitutionally. We are legitimate historically. We are legitimate legally. We are legitimate. But let me say this. We cannot have legitimacy without visibility. Some people say, well, take your militias and go back up in the woods. Don't scare the peasants. Well, let me say this. If you know that there is a brigade running around in camo back up in the woods and you never see them, will that help to dispel your fears, or will it only compound your fears? Will you be legitimate in the hearts of the people? We know we're legitimate constitutionally and legally, but will we be legitimate in the hearts of the people? And let me say this too, that you need a good information officer. Captain Southwell has served well in this capacity. Instruction is so important to let the people in the community know that we are there for them. And you're going to have to win the biggest battle of all, and that's going to be in the hearts of the people. The people are going to have to see the militia as those people who are on their side. Let me say this also, that we are not vigilantes. Vigilantes are those who take the law into their own hands. Vigilantes are the judge, the jury, and the executioner. We are not vigilantes. We are the executive arm of the people. We stand to preserve and to protect the Constitution as it was given to the people of the United States. For this cause we call ourselves the civilian militia. We are constitutional people just like you, civilians from every walk of life. We wear the uniform to show that we are not afraid to stand up, and we will defend and preserve to the best of our abilities the constitutional rights given to each and every American.
You know, talking about being legitimate, Major, I wanted to keep perspective that this is a civilian militia, and so that's why I wear Levi's and wear the coat, you know, to express the fact of unity, that I'm part of an organization I'm proud to be part of. And then I'm not really comfortable with the Anglican collar. I was raised up in a Baptist school and seminary, you know, but again, I wanted to be, you know, visible. I want people to be able to look upon the militia and say they've got somebody there that's, you know, looking to a guideline and a foundation to stand on, and it's a biblical.
Amen.
And that's our legitimacy also, and I believe it's a biblical legitimacy.
Let me ask the question to you. How can you lose legitimacy? You can lose your legitimacy in one of three ways. Number one, if your brigade unit becomes political. If your brigade unit follows a politician and you become a lobbying effort, then you will automatically divide the people. As we have political parties, so you will become a party animal, if you will. Pardon the pun. But you will become either this group or that group. Political affiliation will destroy your legitimacy. The second, if you become denominational. Now don't misunderstand. When we talk about denominational, we are talking about a particular tenet of Christianity. Let's follow this church's tenet, or let's follow this church's tenet, or let's follow this church's tenet. That's wrong. Remember, the Constitution was given to all people everywhere to worship any God that they see fit, or to worship none at all. And we are there for even the atheists, for the Muslim. We will protect the Muslim mosque. We will protect the Jewish synagogue. We will protect the Catholic cathedral. We will protect any and all, because this is America, and that's what it's all about. So if you become political, you will destroy yourself. If you become religious in that respect, you will destroy yourself. And let me say this too, to all you who are listening, and to any of you who have sent hate literature to our address, do not become racial. You must never become racial. If you become of the Aryan nation, or you become Nazis, or you become some group that wants to exterminate other people because of their skin color, or because of their culture, or because of their ethnic background, you will destroy yourself, and you will no longer have that legitimacy that you seek. The Constitution of the United States enables everyone, regardless of race, creed, or profession of faith, to be Americans and to have this very same rights accorded to them as do us all. So stay away from politics, stay away from denominationalism, and stay away from racism. Keep your units as constitutionally pure as you can possibly make them. And that way, if anybody charges you with any crime, you raise your hand and you say, I am guilty. I am just as guilty as were the framers of the Constitution. I am just as guilty as the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And let me say this, if they associate you with those criminals, like the framers said, if this be treason, let's make the best of it.
That's right.
If this is a crime, then we are guilty of being liberty-loving Americans.
To discuss some more of the independence, I want to make sure again that everyone understands that our brigade has set out the manual based on some other documents that we have, and again is in the bulletin board system. And how you set up your brigade is your decision. Who you choose is your decision. How you run it is your decision. What we are asking is that in the state of Michigan, every county go by the numbering system that you've seen in our manual. The need for this is we need to have some type of continuity in communicating through the phone or the bulletin board system with each other. If we all start calling ourselves the 1st Brigade, it becomes real difficult. So again, the numbering system's there. So please, follow that numbering system. Now, we had some individuals that had the difficulty calling themselves the Wolverines. So I suppose if they want to call themselves the Spartans, then that's fine too. We just need to be able to designate different geographic areas. But the brigade and how you establish your militia is your choice, how you want to do it. We're here to help and to encourage. If you like, we'll give our numbers out. Feel free to call me at my office at 616-347-0500, or you can drop us a line. Again, my name's Ray Southwell, Post Office Box 445, Alanson, Alanson, Michigan 49706. And currently we are responding to any phone calls or any written requests for anything. So I'd like to leave that open, and perhaps you can give your numbers out.
I will in just a minute, Captain. One thing I'd like to say is as we establish brigades throughout the state, you'll notice again as the camera comes in close on the diagram showing the Michigan militia concept, that the state is divided into 4 divisions. We want to build the militia called the Michigan Corps. The Michigan Corps will consist of 4 divisions. The Superior Division of the UP Division, the 1st Division, which is the northern half or the northern third of the Lower Peninsula, the Central Division, and then the Southern Division. Each county inside the division is numbered. Now that is only for a logical purpose. There is no authority the 2nd over the 4th Brigade. But we need to be able to network, and we need to be able to coordinate. We need to be able to disseminate information as quickly as possible. Each brigade should establish a headquarters. That brigade headquarters should have access to at least a computer, thank you, Ken, a computer with a modem, so that they can link in with the bulletin board in Allegan Forest. The divisional headquarters should have at least a computer with a modem and a fax machine. And I would certainly ask that if you can find the wherewithal to establish also radio communication, either by ham radio or sideband, CB radios, whatever, do so. That's outlined in our booklet. Our booklets are available. We will be glad to send them to you. Call or write either Ray Southwell or myself. Just write 1st Brigade Headquarters, 7578 Mission Road in Alanson, Alanson, Michigan, 49706, and simply ask for one of our brigade brochures. You'll notice that our uniforms, we have patches on our shoulders here and name tags. It's important that you wear a uniform. If you were ever taken a prisoner, you should at least be able to identify yourself with a brigade unit. So maybe that you'll be treated under the Articles of War and the Geneva Convention. However, I don't know. The one thing you need, though, however, is identity. Wherever you go, you show the patch. You show the ID. You show who you are and who you're associated with. It's important that you have that identity, because that identity draws together integrity. And integrity gives the team spirit so that you with other brigades feel a part. Now, just a little word about our mission and our purpose. You'll notice again in our booklet that our mission and our purpose is very precise, very focused. Keep your purpose and mission very clear. Do not get involved with scenarios, what ifs. The press is going to ask you questions. They will try to involve you in an argument or a dispute. They will try to get you to speak out against political candidates or for this group or against that group. Do not allow them to get you off track. Keep to the Constitution. Ray, tell a little bit about some of the involvement that you've had with the press, and perhaps maybe some of the ways that the folks here can best defend against a press that is trying to discredit.
I think whenever you're dealing with the press, you have to accept the idea that the story may not always be in a favorable light. What amazes me is the article that I felt was the worst written and had the most untruths in it. I mean, to the extent that they didn't even have my picture with my name. They had someone else's picture above my name in the article. I've even had favorable comments from people on that. So feel free to speak your mind with the news media, because you can say the same things to each reporter, and some will twist what you're saying and will go as far as to lie in portraying the information. Also wanted to let everyone know what the status is. Today is the 26th of July, 1994. In the state of Michigan, we have 83 counties, and we currently have approximately 30 people that have come forward willing to contact people in their geographic county. Out of that 30, we have 4 brigades that are up and running, and then all the rest of the 26 are at different levels of development. So if you're out there and you want to be involved in a militia in the state of Michigan, again, call me or write us, and we can either have you be the contact person in that county, or there may already be a brigade up and running or in the formation in that area, and we can give you the contact person's name. So again, we see ourselves as spearheading the information and the networking, and that's all.
Let me tell you a little bit about the personal factors. Now, you're going to have different people come. As I mentioned about this just a minute ago, the fear factor, those people who are afraid. Principally, you're going to have 4 types of people involved in your brigade, or those kinds of people that you talk to. Number 1 are those people whose heads are up. They're clear. They're rational and logical. They know what liberty is, and they know why they have to have it. They are the leaders. You have a second group of people that are the fearful. These people are much concerned about the growing ominous clouds on the horizon. What they're looking for is leadership. They will follow. Number 3, you have what I call the sit in the tavern bunch. The ones that all they'd want to do is talk about past glories. These are the ones that are going to involve you in the endless speeches about what they did in World War II, or what they did in Korea, or what they did in Vietnam. They are living in the past. They're living in the glories. They're in a sense in a denial because they are afraid to accept what is coming our way. Those people will waste your time. The fourth are the people who don't care and they don't know. I call them the Roseanne Arnold six-pack group. They find a comfortable place on their couch and they don't even want to be bothered. They're more concerned about the way their TV cable comes in than they are about liberty in the land. And those people, don't waste your time with them. Minister unto groups number 1 and number 2. Those who are the leaders, those who are the fearful who want leadership. Those are the people that you're going to minister unto. Let me say this also, that you're going to have infiltration in your units. You're going to have principally 3 types of infiltration. You're going to have the moles that come in. The moles are those who are planted, they are staged, they are placed inside your organization to find out information. They will compromise you. Number 2, you will have the provocateurs. The provocateurs come into an organization and they try to cause conflict. They are the ones who build the conflict and the criticism. They are the ones that bring together people's differences and try to embellish these things until you have open strife inside your unit. Number 3, the dissipators. The dissipators are those who seek high levels of leadership. And once they have received that title or that rank, then they will lead the group astray down some endless rabbit trail. Watch out for these 3 kinds of people, the moles, the provocateurs, and the dissipators. Deal with them. Be very careful how you establish your command staff. Do not build your command staff just because you need it. Build your command staff as God enables you. As God gives you the right people for the job, you put them in those positions. And don't step out too quickly to assign responsibility to people, because responsibility must carry with it a great deal of authority. And if you have authority without the responsibility, what happens is you're going to have people who are going to be hurt. And time and people and our material resources are limited. Ray?
Along with that, remember that everything that the militia is doing is constitutional and stay within the law, and that's what we strive to do. When we refer to the moles and these infiltrators that we're talking about, remember the opposition wants to destroy the idea that the militia is a good concept. They want to destroy what we're doing. And that's not because we're doing something illegal. They're doing it because they're afraid of getting the information out. Does it happen? Yes, it does. Has it happened to us? Yes, it has. Probably the best case that I can think of is the state police being at a Patriot meeting, taking down license numbers, obviously, to frighten people. And it worked. It did frighten people, and people stepped back away from our brigade. But remember, they weren't there taking license numbers down because we're doing something wrong. They're there to keep people from coming forward and discussing what's going on, to frighten us, not because we're doing anything legal. So you need to remember that whenever you're dealing with that, and accept the moles and whoever else comes in there. You think you can keep that from happening. If you're underground militia, it's going to happen anyways. So be up front and accept that idea, and then move forward.
And you may not like this, but it's quite obvious that your strength is that which the enemy respects. If you stand together, if you show yourselves as a unit united for a solemn purpose, and you show yourselves as men and women who will not move, will not budge, but will stand, then they must place that factor in the equation before they launch any kind of an operation against you. Listen to me now. I was in the service for more than 20 years. Chaplain Hall served many years in the service and was in combat. We know that the tyrants and the enemy respect strength and they respect steadfastness. We've had that doctrine in our United States for as long as the Soviet Union was alive. We meet the threat with a threat. They will respect that. And let me say this also as we wrap this up this afternoon, and we hope that we've answered most of your questions. Most of the things that you're going to be doing, you're going to find will come naturally. You're going to need a good supply sergeant, someone who's a great scrounger. Someone out there in your group who has an FFL can order your firearms and ammunition. Someone out there who has a small business license, perhaps, can become the one who can procure your equipment and your uniforms from military surplus stores. You have the wherewithal. Some of you have the Xeroxing equipment. Some of you have fax equipment. Some of you have computers and modems. You see, you can all serve. You can all do something. But for God's sake, do something. Do something.
That's right.
And let me say this. And I say this very seriously, that you may see this tape a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, and the 1st Brigade may cease to exist. That doesn't change anything. Let me say this, that until you get to that point where you know that you yourself are expendable, but that the cause of liberty is not, you will be no good at being a militia member. You must understand that you are expendable. But pray this, pray that if you should fall, or if you should be poured out, or if you should be given up, or if you should be burned up for the cause and the sake of liberty, pray this, that as one man goes down, 10 others will take his place. You are expendable, but liberty's lamp and liberty's light must go on burning. That's what they knew then, as they penned their name on that beautiful document called the Declaration of Independence. Every person who wrote his name there declared that he himself had died, because that in fact would be a death warrant if they had lost the cause. And so I say to you, die to yourself and find that new life in liberty. And then you'll find that animating contest that Samuel Adams talked about, that this is what the stuff of being an American is all about. As Patrick Henry said, I am not a Virginian, I am an American. And I stand with all the others. And we stand together with you, arm in arm, for liberty and for justice and for freedom in America. Write to us, call us if you need some help. We'll be glad to help you out. We say then from Chaplain Hall and from Captain Southwell and from our other staff officers that are not with us here today, and from myself, Major Olson, the commander of this unit, we say farewell and we bid you well. And Godspeed. May God's hand of mercy and his hand of safety go with you for the cause of liberty. Goodbye.
They don't want to go back into Texas after Waco. Take Back Texas, a militia group is organizing out there. We helped, the 1st Brigade of the Northern Michigan Regional Militia has been instrumental in starting a brigade in northwest Florida of 500 people. They had their first meeting and they came online about 3 weeks ago. We helped a brigade get started in Dallas, Texas with 600 people. They had their first meeting about 3 weeks ago.